please do use the chat room. So if you just move your mouse, and at the bottom of the screen you will find the chat box, and please do say who you are, where you're joining from today, your job role, and if you've attended a previous webinar, you know, let us know what's the difference it's made to you. And if you send it to all participants, we'll all be able to join in the conversation. And I just believe we've gone live on YouTube as well. So if you are watching on YouTube, very much a big warm welcome to you as well. And please do share in the chat box with us, whether you're on YouTube or if you're on Zoom with us live now. Please do say who you are and where you're joining from today, your role, if you've joined one of the previous sessions, let us know if it's made a difference to you. And if you send it to all participants, if you're on Zoom, then we'll all be able to join the conversation.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Nyawade. We are delighted to have you join our session today. Welcome to John, who is already using the chat box. As you are joining us, please use the chat box and just share with us who you are, where you're joining from today, your job role. And if you're on Twitter, please share with us your Twitter handle as well. We'd like to follow you. And also let us know if you've joined us for other sessions before and whether that made a difference to you. And send it to all the participants if you're using the chat box. Thank you.
Welcome if you're just joining us. There's 22 of us at the moment, but hopefully it will be, they will grow quite quickly. I think lots of people have now got, lots of people used to join quite early, but now we're all quite familiar with these, with the technology and the sessions, and this is our now our 9th session. I think people are joining later and later because you know how it works and what we get up to. So welcome everybody. Hi Ross. Hi Naomi. So Ross is from Oxford Health, Head of Health and Wellbeing and Stress Lead. Welcome. We've got Avril. Hi Avril. NHS EI Health and Wellbeing Manager near Winchester. Hello. Previous sessions have been very informative and helped with learning in your new role. Well, I'm glad they have, and welcome Avril. And we've got Mark. Hi Mark, welcome. Looking forward to your session later and tell us a little bit more about your experience. So I'm Zoe Lord. I work in the Horizons team. I'm in Staffordshire today and have been for the last 8 or 9 of these wellbeing webinars. And I've got loads and loads out of these previous sessions. The main one that hit me most was the one about supporting our BAME network and our BAME colleagues, and a colleague and myself have been having some reverse mentoring. We've had 1 session so far and I found it immensely helpful. So welcome if you're just joining us. Hi Bridget. Bridget's going to be sharing some learning today from the Naval Families Federation. We've got Cheryl Samuels with us. Hi Cheryl. And we've got Sonia as well. So welcome everybody.
Hello everybody, my name is Elizabeth Nyawade and I'm joining today from Tooting Broadway in southwest London. It's really cloudy here. It was raining a few minutes ago. We usually have these sessions when it's sunny and beautiful.
We do.
There's a difference today. And similarly, I've really benefited from these sessions. I think the big one for me was benefiting from getting a mentor from the Army. Really grateful for that connection and that support that was provided for by the people team. Thank you very much. And as you're joining us, please use the chat box, share with us who you are, where you're joining from, your job role, and also let us know if you've joined previous webinars and whether that made a difference to you or not. Thank you.
So while we're just waiting for our session to start at 4 o'clock, I thought you might like to hear about our community platform that we've got. This is our Wellbeing community platform, and everyone is more than welcome to join this platform, and we'll put the links both in the YouTube platform and the Zoom platform as well. And this is where we can connect and learn together. You can share your experiences, or you can ask questions as well about things that you're doing and things that you might like some help with. So as we're just starting, then please do say hello in the chat box. So hello Em, and hello Fee, and hello Naomi. Welcome to the session today. Please do tell us where you are, your role, and what's the impact of these sessions on you and your team that you work with. And if you send it to all participants, we'll be able to see that as well. I also wanted, just in this time before our session starts at 4, is just to let you know that we're collecting people on our mailing list as well, so that we can share with you more information about the wellbeing webinars and the programme as well. So to date, we've got well over 1,000 people that are on that mailing list. So please do join that and the Tribe platform for all the up-to-date information. So welcome. So our numbers are growing on YouTube. Welcome everybody, and they're growing on Zoom as well. So welcome everybody. Please do say hello in the chat box. We're using both chat boxes today, so please do say hello. Tell us what your role is and what a difference any of the sessions have made to you. This is number 9 of our sessions, and we look forward to having more. We've got quite a few planned for the future as well, so looking forward to sharing those with you.
Hello, Paula. Paula is joining us from Scotland, and it is overcast in Scotland as well. Hello to Em, who is joining us. Alan as well. Hello, Alan. Alan is joining from, he didn't include that, but welcome, Alan. Alan has been with us before this session, so welcome. Good to have you back. Welcome to Anne, and lots of people are joining us. Welcome to Fiona. And welcome to Sonia, who we will be hearing from Sonia today as well. Please use the chat box and let us know who you are and where you're joining from today and what your job role is. Thank you.
And I've noticed a note from Joe in the YouTube, in the Zoom platform, and Joe says that it's sunny in Suffolk. It's definitely not sunny here in Staffordshire. So welcome everybody. Hi Seema from Bristol, and Helen, welcome everybody. So it's now 4 o'clock. Welcome everybody to our Wellbeing webinar. Today we're going to be focusing on supporting working parents. This is close to my heart. I have a 7-year-old upstairs at the moment. No doubt he will be down at some point to say hello to us all. And it's, whether you have children and you'd like some support yourself, you're a manager and you'd like to support your colleagues better, I'm sure this session will be for you. We've got lots and lots of top tips, and I hope that we can continue to use the chat boxes, both in YouTube and in Zoom, to share your experiences and to share your top tips as well. We're all here to learn from one another. So with all of our Wellbeing Wednesdays, what we want to do, the aim of all these sessions, is to offer support, ideas, knowledge and wisdom for those who have a role in supporting the health and wellbeing of our staff. We want to share a range of wellbeing support activities that are available, and we'll hear that from Sonia. And we also want to connect with each other, collectively build our community together so that we can together support the health and wellbeing of our staff.
On our agenda today, you've got me and Zoe. You've already met us. We will be your facilitators today. And we will hear from Dr. Sonia Waldbank about the update on the national support, the offer we have nationally. And then we will also hear from Mark Watson, who will share with us his experience. And we will also hear from Bridget Nicholson about learning from the Naval Families Federation. And we will hear from Dr. John Finn about looking after yourself. And then we'll have a session, a conversation session with all our contributors. And finally, we will close with a call to action and some closing remarks, including sharing with you what we'll have next week. And on the team today, you've already met me and Zoe. Our contributors will be Dr. Sonia Waldbank, Bridget Nicholson, Dr. John Finn, and Mark Watson. Welcome to all our contributors. Our technical hosts, we have Paul, Tej, and Annabelle, who will make sure this session goes really, really well. So if you have any issues, please share it on the chat box, and our technical host will respond to that and help you throughout today's session. Our chat box facilitators today are Naomi and Claire. Welcome. On YouTube, we've got Helen and Ian, and on social media today, we have Zara. Please, if you're using the social media, use the hashtag caring for our NHS people. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Sonia Waldbank, who is our Health and Wellbeing Clinical Lead, NHS England and NHS Improvement. Dr. Sonia will share with us an update on the national offer that we've all benefited from throughout this session. Thank you, Sonia, and over to you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Next slide, please.
They're on their way. They're a little bit slow today.
I know how they feel. I really do. So I just, as I like to do each week, just wanted to share with you the update on activity, and really just to say, I don't know about your life, but we've started to say goodbye to a few of our team members as they go back to their future state jobs, you know, what they would normally be doing. So it's been really tough, actually. This is a real team effort that I'm here hosting every week. So lots of our colleagues in the people team working on this. In the national helplines, we've had, I was looking today, just under 3,000 calls actually now, 1,400-ish text conversations. Again, those text conversations seem to be coming in the evening. Both the text and the national helplines are open to all of our social care colleagues now. So really ask you to push that out there. With any of our offers, I think the trick is getting them to the people who we want to be using them, and opening them up and making sure that people understand that they are there for them. 120,000 downloads of the apps and the people website as we continue to update it. I was looking today actually, and the number of resources that we've got around homeschooling, working parents, the City Parents app that's just come online. Go and have a look at the peoplenhs.uk website to get the download instructions for that. That is brilliant, a whole range of resources there for you from the team supporting that. Really what's coming through from the helplines, the relationships, family worries, what we call the secondary stressors. So it might not be that the work is the thing that's stressful, but the work in balancing all of these other things, the fact that this awful COVID has impacted us practically, financially, relationship-wise, all of those things play into our experience of mental health and the things that we might need support with. And it's the children. That's what's coming out loud and clear, is that it's the children. I mean, I've got 3 children myself, all teenagers, and one has had to come home from university very early after we had lots of upset at her going. She's come back prematurely. But then one who was supposed to be doing GCSEs, and that's been the toughest thing really to handle, is that sort of big push for learning, and then this damp squib at the end. So completely understand the pressures, and all being locked down together, which at the best of times is a challenge. We've got the React peer training coming online from next week, and the King's College London screening site. So this is the site that's the How Am I? You go and answer a few questions for yourself, and you'll be signposted to the best offer next step for you. We're just building that, making sure that we've got the right levels to signpost people to. And then I'll go on to my next slides, because I want to talk a little bit about the actual mental health interventions that are coming. Thank you. So the work that we're doing right now is twofold. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit very briefly about our BAME work. Again, it would be wrong to not mention this week, given everything that is going on around the events that have been happening with George Floyd in America, to not mention the impact that this is having for us locally. Anybody that's been involved in a service can feel the palpable tension that this is creating for us as a society. We're really working hard with our community advisors and spiritual support workers around how do we support our BAME colleagues to enhance and amplify the great work that they're doing, so they can sustain that and scale that up for us. No matter what I say this to you every week, but I'll just repeat it, no matter what we put in place nationally, it's what happens locally, what your lived experience is on the ground of your line manager, of your team. And again, that's where we see the resilience lying. We've got occupational health and EAP that we're supporting with hopefully a good offer around how do we get a gold standard running through Occy Health and EAP for the future recovery stage. And then we're looking at how do we help STP level, ICS level, so very local level systems, support through a resilience hub model. So mental health through those local areas, signposting, outreach. We recognise that there won't be a kind of big rush for people up taking services, because we're a little bit rubbish at help seeking. So we know we want to outreach, we want to bring the offer to people and make sure people can see themselves in that. Thanks, Zoe. I'll just go to the next slide quickly. So our core principles around our BAME offer, and we're going to have a separate webinar to discuss this, that will be a real practical focus around the work that we're doing, is that we're doing this together. We're doing this in the community. It would be really foolhardy of us to think that we can be both the person who is providing sometimes the source of oppression and then the solution to that oppression. And I really want to work hard over the next few years on our culture change programme and introducing and living the people plan. But we're not there yet. We're not the trusted partner. And so we want to work with those trusted partners in the community to make sure that the offer comes from a place of trust. Myth busting. The number of times I hear us speak about BAME as if it's, one big group of people who all look and act the same, rather than the nuances that exist amongst those groups. And the way that they want to grieve and get support, again, is going to be individual. And then working along with our community to really help us build a robust offer for the future. And thank you. Just one more from me. So these are the key actions, and the key actions that we're taking right now. You've heard me talk about the Filipino helpline. Joyce Fletcher, who's an amazing lady at Oxford, is helping us trial something called Connect Groups, which are not about organisations doing staff networks, but more about groups of people coming together because they share a similar characteristic or interest. So it might be men coming together to talk about football, cricket, or mental health, sports groups coming together, really promoting that idea of connection and support together. And actually, there may only be a few of our BAME colleagues in a particular trust, but nationally, there's a whole group of people. So how do we build those connect groups together and start that movement of working together and supporting each other? So we want to be working both to support individuals, just simple things. It doesn't have to be complex in terms of ensuring that teams have that cultural sensitivity, understand what's going on. Can you believe last week I heard about a Sikh doctor friend being asked to shave his beard off so that the PPE fitted him, without any real consideration as to, you know, what that significance of his beard was in his religious and spiritual religion. It just surprises me that we're still needing to do that sort of basic level of spiritual competence. But let's do that. Let's make sure everybody has the language that they feel comfortable in. Thank you, Zoe. That's me for today.
Thanks, Sonia. So if anybody has any questions for Sonia, please do add them to the chat boxes, and we will ask Sonia just to go in and have a look at those, as well as our chat box monitors that we've got in both YouTube and Zoom. So as we move on to our topic of supporting working parents, what I'd love to do is hear a little bit about you and how you've been getting on. So what we're thinking about is, what top tips do you have to share with other managers or working parents? So as you've had children at home, or you've got members of staff who have children at home, what are the things that you've been putting in place for them? Or how have you adjusted your day, your working day, for better health and well-being for you, your families and your colleagues? So please do share those in both of the chat boxes. I thought I'd share some of the things that we've done in our team and what I've been doing as well. We used to have a lot of all-day meetings, so we've stopped all-day meetings now, and we space them out. So we might have 45 minutes or 30 minutes and then a break, and then maybe another 30 minutes and then another break, so that people have time to tend to the children. I know my son, he's unable to go for a whole hour on his own. So we've been looking at 45-minute meetings. So we've been thinking about those sort of things. We've also been thinking about flexi time as well. How can we flex our time around the needs of our work and the needs of our family life as well? So I'm going to come to the chat box in a moment in Zoom, and then the chat box in YouTube as well. But please do share some things in both of the chat boxes. What top tips have either you implemented for yourself or for your colleagues as well? So I'm going to come over to Naomi. Naomi, what are you seeing in the chat boxes?
So, lots going on in the chat box. I think a big thing today would be some thank yous to Sonia, and thank yous particularly around mentioning the situation in America with George Floyd. A lot of colleagues commented on that, and also Valerie sort of thanking Sonia for recognising that a lot of the health and wellbeing response is happening locally at ICS level. There were some questions as well. So Neil asked an interesting question with regards to our colleagues in social care and whether any of the offers that have been made available for the NHS will extend into social care, and there's a thinking around that. Other colleagues are interested to know how long things like the National Helpline and text lines will be available for. So yeah, lots going on. We're in the chat box on a couple of specific questions for Sonia as well.
Thanks, Naomi. So in Zoom, they're sort of flocking in now. There's quite a few questions and top tips. So people are just saying, you know, be kind to yourself, put time aside for yourselves, for work and for your children. Ask for help if you're needed. That's from Kerry is saying that. We've got Kerry's also saying genuine compassion and support and understanding. not making assumptions that we all need the same thing. That's right. So just it's very different, I'm sure, from my 7-year-old to maybe Sonia's teenagers as well. So lots and lots of differences between all of the children. I'm going to pop over to Ian. What's happening in YouTube, Ian?
Hi Zoe, we're a little bit quiet in the YouTube chat room at the minute. We've got about 42 people on the line and about 5 or 6 people who are joining in the chat. In terms of some of the things that have been said, Jackie, who's calling in from Oxford Health NHS Trust, is saying that she's really glad to hear of the work that Sonia outlined in terms of the BAME work and about making sure that becomes a core requirement of the work as we go forward. I just shared a couple of tips that I use as a working parent myself. One of the things that we do as a family at the weekend is just try and find some space for a bit of a treat, whatever that is. And for us, it's a bit of cake and coffee, you know. So again, that's one of the tips that I've just shared into the YouTube chat room. But if anybody wants to share some more with me, please do so. We're a little bit quiet at the moment.
Thanks, Ian. So there's quite a few now pouring in the chat box. So I'm going to have a little look at those, but please do keep adding to them as we go through the next few presentations. Maybe it might be triggering something in your mind that you could do or you have done that would help others. So I'm now going to hand over to Mark. I'm going to ask Mark to introduce himself, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience. So over to you, Mark.
Hello everybody, I'm Mark Watson and I'm the Director of Workforce for the London region at NHS England and Improvement. So I've been asked to join the discussion today to give an insight into my personal experience of being a parent and trying to work at the same time during the COVID incident. And I think the reason I've been asked is that many of my colleagues have met virtually, one or both of my boys, as they've often climbed onto my knee in a meeting as I'm sitting in this chair, and they'll sit here and wave and say hello to everybody else who's in the meeting. So by way of background, I've got identical twin boys, they're 3.5, and the nursery closed in March in line with all other childcare facilities across the country. But I recognise that I'm very, very lucky by the nature of my role that I have been able to work from home. I've had really good support from my line manager, and I'm also supporting several of my team members who also have childcare responsibilities. In addition, though, I also went into self-isolation in March because I've got severe asthma. And again, that was with the support of my line manager, while also supporting colleagues and members of my team who were shielding. So some points that I will mention that I've reflected on and think have been important and helpful for me, both as an individual, but also as a manager. So leading by example, I think that was actually really important for my team and also for my colleagues, for the various different teams that we interact with as part of our roles, to see that I'm juggling things too. So either with, I will be in a meeting, and I'm not joking, it is not unusual for a child just to climb on top of me or want to come and sit next to me while I'm in a meeting. Or just for people to hear the background noise, because when you're talking, you've got your mute button when you're not talking, but when you are talking, there's no mute button for the children, so you just have to get on with it. And what's been really good is how understanding everybody has been about that. But also, I think it's good, as I said, to lead by example. So my colleagues can say, actually, this is acceptable. This is the world and the situation that we're living in at the moment. I think the use of technology has been really, really helpful. So within our organisation, and when I interact externally with STPs and ICSs, all meetings now have Teams facility. And on a practical point, the mute button has been very, very helpful, but also the ability to turn off the camera, which I've often done when I've had to do a toilet trip with a 3-year-old, because as other parents know, when a 3-year-old says they need the toilet, you don't have time to wait, you have to take them straight there. And also using Teams and my team, my colleagues being considerate with my challenges. I've actually chaired several team meetings while cooking tea for my boys. I think working hours on a practical point, how we manage that as a family, and I take the point that's come up in the chat box. that this has to be personal. It's got to be what's going to work for you and for your family. So for us, routine was really good. Getting up and ready for work at the same time every day. I mean, quite honestly, you don't have that much choice with 2 toddlers because they get up early anyway. But where possible, we would always have meals together as a family. And I think this was really important for us to pause just for those few minutes. And, you know, really, sometimes it would only just be for 5 or 10 minutes, just sit down, make sure the boys had eaten their food, make sure that I was just taking that time out to talk to them while we were all eating. Where possible, we also took the boys out for a walk each afternoon. And, you know, being really honest, this wasn't possible to do every day, but we always tried. This did mean, though, that the working day was extended due to the breaks during the day, due to interruptions from having 2 toddlers running around the house and needing attention. So I would often have to work each evening just after the boys had gone to bed, just to be able to catch up. I think interesting experience for me personally is the guilt that I felt as a parent. I think we as a family have coped very well. We have been very, very lucky with the boys because of their age, because at 3, they don't really understand or care what's going on. They're really happy being at home, spending time with us, happily playing, watching cartoons. But while we work, they would be reasonably well behaved most of the time, playing with their toys, reading their books. But at 3, they're easily distracted and they will demand attention. So when I had to go on to formal meetings, which I've often had to do, I needed to use Netflix, and that was my saviour. We also had a friend who has given us the present a Disney subscription, and that's been fantastic. But the guilt that I felt for that personally, leaving them in front of the TV or the iPads or an iPad for periods of time, has been quite significant for me. I also think having a holiday was really, really important. So we were due to be in Spain for 2 weeks in May. Clearly that was cancelled, but we still took a week off. We weren't particularly looking forward to having a week stuck in the house, but actually it was really, really nice. I was really good, and I switched off my phone and my laptop on the Friday evening and felt like we actually had a really nice restful break. And we only allowed Netflix for 30 minutes each evening while they were having the milk before they went to bed. Interestingly, from what I found interesting to reflect on, is when I came back to work on the 26th of May, last Tuesday, I had 4 days to work with the boys still at home. And that felt really challenging. And I don't really understand why. It just felt really difficult for us both to get back into the zone. So we were incredibly grateful when the nursery reopened on Monday. And here, just as a little picture of us, we did go to Whitstable last week, but that picture wasn't taken last week. This was pre-COVID. One final point that I will end with, though, on a lighter note, the greatest benefit of being home with the boys for 10 weeks was that we finally conquered toilet training, and they were returned to work. They returned to nursery in their underpants and out of nappies, which was a fantastic achievement, and we're very, very proud of them.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I'm stuck on the photo. It's so beautiful. And there are lots and lots of comments in the chat box about how lovely your family photo is. And thank you for sharing that insight with us. I think lots of people would relate to your experience, and especially at this particular time. So I was hoping to see the twins come up and wave, but that will be for next time. The picture is lovely. So I'm now going to introduce Bridget. Bridget is the Director of Evidence and Strategy at the Naval Families Federation, and Bridget will share with us some learning from the Naval Families Federation. Welcome, Bridget.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It's really lovely to be here. I'm part of a team of people who work with serving people in the Royal Navy and Royal Marines to help them with specific challenges that come about as a result of their service in the armed forces. Working away from home is a very common part of life for the Royal Navy and Royal Marines. Perhaps I could have the first slide, if that's all right. It's just a photo. Although it's the smallest of the armed forces, the Navy is the most deployed, and they spend up to 60% of their time away on operational deployment. So sometimes that can be for a period of months in a ship or a submarine where there's very little contact with home. And sometimes people might be working away within the UK and travelling home at weekends when they can. So I was invited to come and talk to you really because a lot of people in the NHS are working away from home or separated from loved ones and children during this COVID-19 response for a variety of reasons, sometimes to keep people at home safe and to sort of reduce risk, sometimes because you're needed for a particular role. There's all sorts of reasons, and people are having to compartmentalize their lives and sometimes physically distance themselves from people that they care about in order to be able to do their job. So I'm going to share with you just some thoughts really about working away from home from the experiences of our families, in case that's any help to you or to somebody that you work with. Obviously, we've only got a quite short amount of time, but I think there'll be some links from the webinar to some online resources if you find any of this helpful or interesting. None of it is rocket science, but hopefully it might help a little bit. The main thing that we find when we talk to our family members about having somebody working away, whether that's a partner or a parent, is that there's a huge amount of emotional adjustment that has to take place on top of all the practical stuff. Could I have the next slide? Back in the 1980s, there was a US Navy veteran, a lady called Catherine Vestal Logan, who developed a model called the emotional cycle of deployment to help illustrate this kind of emotional journey that people go on when somebody is going away for an operational deployment and then is coming home again. It's quite an old model, but it can help us to sort of understand some of the feelings that people experience and the sort of behaviours that children in particular can exhibit as a result. There's a lot of feelings involved when somebody goes away and then later returns. So I'm not going to talk through this in enormous detail, but if you start in the middle section at the top in that hot pink bit, there's a phase before the person goes away where there's a sense of anticipation of the loss of the person for a period of time. Working around this sort of model clockwise, before the person goes away, there's often a sense of this sort of detachment and withdrawal. And that's a kind of a strange time when you know that somebody is going away, because there's a sense of pressure to make the most of the time, but often that creates its own sort of friction and pressure. And so there can be arguments and disagreements while people are getting ready to be separated. And then people feel guilty. You know, guilt is a big thing for all of us at the moment for various reasons. They feel guilty because they're not being lovely all the time and they're not making the most of the time they've got. Then the person leaves. And that can feel like a shock and create other feelings of loss and emptiness, or even a sense of relief that the person has actually finally gone and the anticipation bit is over because that was horrible. And then gradually things start to settle down. You get this recovery and stabilization, and things start to feel a little bit more normal, and you settle into a pattern of how you are going to be. And then just when you're sort of getting a handle on things, then things have to make another adjustment. You have to anticipate the person coming back home. And the early days after them coming home, they might be quite joyous. You've anticipated them, you've looked forward to them. But very often there's also a sense of friction as you're getting used to having that person back around again and settling into new routines and reintegrating your family. So it's quite a complicated business when people are moving to and from home to work. This model was based on a 6 months deployment cycle, but if you're working away during the week and coming home at weekends or doing short periods, you can go through a whole spectrum of feelings in quite rapid succession. And there's, and inevitably this has an effect on the way we behave as adults and also on the way that our kids behave. So I guess what I'm in a nutshell, because we could talk about this for ages, in terms of how everyone is feeling, really kind of all bets are off, and complicated feelings are really normal. So if you find working away from home really challenging, you are absolutely not alone. You are completely normal. What I can say about having worked with a lot of armed forces families is that you don't need to torture yourself about being away. Really, you know, we experience guilt for so many reasons, and actually what we find with talking to our families is that if you can keep the lines of communication open, and you can be aware of your own feelings and of the feelings of the people in your family, you can actually navigate this situation. It's not comfortable, but it's doable. And many of the young people and children that we talk to say that being part of a family where there is this kind of disruption from time to time actually helps them to become more resourceful. They kind of become more responsible for certain things. They become a bit more considerate of the people in their home, and they become more aware of what's happening in the wider world. So it can be really tricky to manage, and there are, you know, plenty of poo traps, but it's a situation that, you know, it's not going to cause like irreparable harm to your kids, you know, and we all beat ourselves up about not being good enough as parents in all sorts of realms. So I'm really pleased that John's coming on in a minute, because I think he's going to talk to you about things to do to take care of yourself, because that is really kind of the most important thing. It's the, you know, especially for the person who's at home with sort of parental responsibility, you know, lower your standards. You don't have to be lovely all the time. You know, perfection really is kind of the enemy. You are going to make mistakes. Just apologize when you do. You will get through it. There is nobody out there doing this perfectly. Everybody is just kind of muddling through to some extent. So please just, you know, be encouraged, and give yourself some credit for the great work that you're doing, because, you know, that's something that that we need to remember to do for ourselves. I could go on, but I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bridget. I really like that the model for emotional cycle of deployment. Many people can relate to different elements of that. Thank you very much. We're now going to hear from Dr. John Finn, and Dr. John Finn is the founder and managing director of Tougher Minds. So if we have the next slide, please. Yes, and welcome, John. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hi guys, just going to share my screen so you can see my slides. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I'm going to quickly speak about 5 steps for better self-care in a challenging world. And you can use these insights as a working parent for yourself, but also for your family. And as a manager, a line manager, you can use these insights for yourself, but also for the people that you are working with as well. The core thing to take away from any self-care type insights is that knowing more stuff isn't necessarily going to help you. You've got to use those insights and put it into practice and move it from the knowing to the doing and building it into a habit. And to make it super easy for you to do that, we're going to give everybody in the NHS free access to our Me Power Planner and the online resilience, wellbeing and performance course that comes with that. So we'll show you how to get access to that later. So step number 1, if we're going to look after ourselves, we've got to understand how our brain works. And to help us to understand this, we're going to have a little bit of a test. So it's going to be one of those sessions. You're going to have to do some work. So the test is very simple. Can you read out the copy in the white lozenge just as you would read it out in plain English? Okay, so yes, we can. And the reason we can do this, it turns out that most of what we're doing most of the time is mindless behavior. At least 95% of what we're doing. So for every 50 things your brain is doing right now, you're aware of about 1 of them. And to understand the brain in more detail, we can make a mini model of it. So if you put your left or your right hand flat like this, and you put your thumb into the palm of your hand like that, and you wrap your fingers around your thumb like this, this is a mini model of your brain. Now the thumb in the middle is representing the limbic regions. This is running most of what you're doing most of the time. And the little finger in the model is representing the part of your brain that runs from behind your eyes all the way to the top of your head. And this is the prefrontal cortex. Now, what we need to understand is that the thumb, the limbic regions, that's running most of what we're doing most of the time, is interested in three core things. Number one is staying alive. Number two is how you're perceived by other people. And number three is saving energy. So we call this part of the brain the alive, perceived energy brain. And we shorten that down to ape. So we are great apes, but it also explains what our brain is designed to do. So we've been evolving for over 200,000 years. And what we need to be very mindful of is that lots of our survival habits are not always that helpful in the modern world, and lots of them are becoming increasingly less helpful, like worrying and beating ourselves up. And what we need to recognize is that these ideas are habits. So if you want to get really good at worrying, all you need to do is practice it a lot, then you will become a world champion worrier. So that's how these things work. Now, the good news is if we go back to our brain model, the little finger in our model, and the blue area you see on the screen, the prefrontal cortex, we call this the hack brain, which is the helpful attention control brain. And we imagine that a little character runs that brain called Wilhelmina power or willpower. You can decide which one it is for you. And we can use Wilhelmina power or willpower to help us to manage the ape brain and ultimately build new habits. And in the planner and the online course we're going to give you free access to, explains lots more about how your brain works. But if you want to get good at looking after yourself and others, we need to understand how the brain works. Step number two then, very simple. We've got to get really good at establishing and connecting our long-term goals with our medium-term goals and our short-term goals. So we need to get good at understanding, well, what do we want to achieve in the distant future? How does that impact what we need to achieve in the next 1 to 4 years? How does that impact what we need to achieve in the next 12 months and this month and this week and today? And that's going to make it much easier to manage the ape brain in the short term. And again, in the planner, we've got some really neat tools that make it really easy for you to think about yourself in this way and help others to think about themselves in this way. So step number two for self-care is set big goals and connect them with today. Next, steps number 3 and 4, very simple. We have to get much better at stepping back and reflecting on both our helpful and our unhelpful habits. So we call this intelligent self-watching. And in the planner, we show you how to target one small, unhelpful habit at a time and replace it with something that's much more helpful. And in order to make our brain work properly, and in particular the hippocampus or the hippocampi, because there's one in each hemisphere, that's the only part of our brains that produces new brain cells. That's essential for managing stress really well and for learning and developing. The foundation habits that we need to get right are our sleep, our diet, and our exercise. And in the planner, again, we've got some real neat tools that make it super easy to manage your sleep, your diet, and your exercise every single day and make improvements. So the final step, recap step number 3, analyze your habits and build new ones. Step number 4, work, because it's increasingly difficult to do. We've got to work on our sleep, our diet, and our exercise, and aim to make tiny adjustments every day. 5 minutes or 1 minute of extra sleep tonight, 1 more glass of water, 1 more piece of fruit, 5 minutes more walking. That will make us feel much better. And then finally, guys, step number 5, we need to get good at having good planning and reflection structures for each month, for each week, and each day. We've got to think of our lives like this, and it helps us to manage the ape brain. So one of the tools we've got in the course we'll give you free access to is the weekly wall chart. So this is something that I fill in at the beginning of every week. I then stick it on the fridge, then I can monitor myself throughout the week. Am I doing the kind of things that are going to help me to be healthy, happy, and at my best? And equally in the planner, we've also got neat little tools you can use to monitor and plan daily, weekly, and monthly. So we've got to get good at that. So we're going to take some questions, guys, collectively from Mark and Bridget as well afterwards. So any questions you've got, we can answer them. If you want to send me a direct email, if you've got a specific question, I'm happy to take that. So that's my email address, personal email address. We've got loads of free resources on the website, so you can check out tougherminds.co.uk. That's our Twitter handle, Tougher Minds. And then please do take us up on the offer to access the free planner for yourself, your colleagues, families, etc. I'll put a link into that, into the chat box shortly. Thank you very much, guys. That's my time up.
Thanks, John. So I'm just going to bring our slides up here. Just bear with me just a moment. You should be able to see the slides coming up now. Here we are. So thanks ever so much, John. A whistle-stop tour and lots and lots of content that we can access after. Same with Bridget's as well. So thank you ever so much. So we're going to come to the chat boxes, both in YouTube and Zoom at a moment. So please do add your questions in there. So if you've got any questions for Mark, Bridget or John, then please do add those to both of the chat boxes. So before we go to those questions, I'd just like to maybe come to Mark first and then to Bridget and then to John. And I was just wondering, do you want to share something that you've heard in the presentation so far? Either something that's resonated with you or a top tip that you're going to take forward or you're going to share with other people. So I'm going to come to you, Mark, first, and then to Bridget and then to John.
So I love structure. And it works for us as a family as well. So I love that planning, the concept that John talked about for planning, and it is something I try and use at home and at work as well. And just a good way of working with your teams, for, you know, to being clear what do we need to achieve this week. You know, it's all about planning for just to make sure that you get that satisfaction that you personally are delivering stuff, but also professionally that you're delivering stuff and adding value.
Thanks, Mark. Bridget.
I really liked what John just said about making tiny adjustments. I think somebody commented on it in the chat as well, that because sometimes we kind of know this sort of in general, the things that we're meant to do to take care of ourselves, but sometimes that all just seems really overwhelming. And just the fact that you only need to like make a little micro adjustment each day to get somewhere is quite helpful, I think, because we can tend to sort of be a bit sort of all or nothing about these things, can't we? And it's like, I'm going to change everything and be a better person. And of course that just can't happen because we're people.
Yeah, totally. What I got, Bridget, from your session was, or your presentation, was just about, you know, don't aim for perfection. I'm quite like that. I do quite aim for perfection, and the old world as well. So maybe I pine back for the old world. But yeah, that's what I took from yours, was really about, you know, try not to go for that and be kind to yourself. John, what about yourself?
I think the point from Mark's and Bridget's talk, so I think what I really liked about one of the things Mark said was turning off the laptop and the phone for the week, you know, and doing the staycation piece, but really just disconnecting. You know, I think we all would benefit from doing that more often in the parameters that are possible for us. And then what I liked about Bridget's talk was the visual and putting perspective on the emotional cycle. We get, emotions are very intense for people, and we can't always see ourselves and notice what's going on. So the ability to be able to step back and actually recognize that this is a cycle and there's going to be a process here. We can't just switch these off. I think that's really important for people. Ultimately, as we're going to go now through a transition into whatever the post-COVID world looks like, and it's probably going to be a world of flexible working for many more people than it used to be. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, thanks, John. And what I got from yours, John, is like I got lots of stuff from me in there as well. So I am a really big worrier. So just like, and what I've been trying to do and what I found through sort of this new COVID world is that some things have just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've used some of the apps that are available on our People website. So I've been using those just to calm things down and enabled me to get a little bit more sleep, which has helped loads. And Mark, what I got from yours is I just love the realism from what you shared with us. And I'm sure many people could resonate with some of the things that you've been, what you've been trying to do, and some of the things that, some of the structure that you put around the family to help things keep going. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to come to Claire in the chat room first, and just before I do, I've seen lots of people asking for resources from Bridget and John, so we'll share those both on the Tribe platform as well. We'll put the link to the Tribe platform and we'll also share all the links in here as well. So Claire, over to you. What sort of questions are we hearing in the chat box?
Hi Zoe, we've had quite a lot of recognition actually about the guilt and how people and parents are feeling at home with having their children around, and colleagues just reminding one another to be kind to themselves as well as to people they line manage or people they work with, that they're finding that they're supporting colleagues with children and actually they're not applying that to themselves in their own situation. So that is definitely something for everyone to be mindful of. We've had a question come through about when situations change with schooling, does anyone have any tips on how to support the differing needs of their staff so that others don't feel like they're being treated differently or unfairly?
Great question. Thanks, Claire. So Mark, Bridget, John, any thoughts on that question?
I didn't quite hear the question properly there. Sorry, Claire.
So yeah, so it was around some children going back to school. Is that right, Claire? Maybe thinking about equality, is there as well, and fairness?
Yes,
some themes like that.
If we've got the school situation changing and some parents might need some support and other parents might need further support, how do we make sure that we're treating all our staff fairly and people aren't feeling like they're not getting the same level of support from colleagues?
So I suppose for me, as a HR leader, manager, I would say it's around supporting the line manager to make sure that they're giving that individual the support that they need, because it will vary, you know, it varies for individuals anyway, and it is around ensuring that that individual gets the appropriate level of support for their circumstances that they're facing at that time, and that will vary as well as the situation grows and develops.
Yeah, I think it's about communication, isn't it? Communication and listening, and it's not one size fits all, is it? So, and Louise has put in the chat box, case by case rather than blanket approaches for staff.
Yeah.
John, and Bridget, I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, or we can ask for some more questions that are coming through the chat boxes.
I think. Go on, Bridget.
Go on, John. No, go for it, John. Go for it.
I was just going to say that there are lots of uncontrollable things that are going on at the moment. And, you know, the reason any one thing is stressful is because there's a disconnection between what you expected to happen and what is actually happening. That could be something as simple as you hold the door open for somebody and you expect them to say thank you and they ignore you. That causes a little stress response. Or it could be that I feel that I'm being treated unfairly and I'm not getting the support because my children have had to go back to school. And I think that we can also help people by reminding them to control what they can control and take responsibility for those tiny things that actually make life a lot easier. As simple as staying hydrated and making sure you're doing a little bit of exercise every day and you're eating well and you're trying to get to bed a little bit earlier and not just staying up and consuming more Netflix. So I know it doesn't solve the problem, but life is kind of on a continuum from a 10 at its worst end to a 1 at its best. Right now, we're all kind of up towards the 10 end and no one's going to do anything that makes it go to a 1. So it's just how can we do a little bit better, I think is quite a good focus to have.
Thanks, John. And Bridget, you were going to share something too.
Just a thought really to that aspect of sort of fairness, and because obviously making accommodations for people who have children is a kind of a very visible thing that people kind of necessarily have to draw the attention of their employer to. But everybody in these circumstances has something going on, and it may not be immediately obvious to line managers. So I guess it is that kind of for line managers to communicate and talk and find out, whether there is, something for that particular individual. It's very much knowing your people, I guess, and giving space and opportunity for them to talk about what's happening for them.
Yeah, and what matters to you as well, and it's very different for everybody. So thanks. Helen, let's go over to you in YouTube. Have you got any questions?
Yeah, we're having a very good chat box conversation in YouTube, and as in the Zoom chat box, we've had a big conversation about guilt and being a parent and doing a job and in these trying circumstances. Laura made a comment which is how different our reaction to the situation is compared to 3 months ago, just how our world has changed in that time. So the first question I've got is actually for Mark, if that's okay. So, Mark, you painted a wonderful picture of, being a very senior leader in the NHS and doing a fantastic job as a parent at the same time. So just looking ahead a little bit, we know that we've got our NHS People Plan that's going to be coming soon. And one of the things that we're going to see in the NHS People Plan is a set of people promises, the things that we as the NHS system want to promise to all of our staff. So, based on what we've seen today and how there's a completely different attitude that we're seeing now around, being a parent who works compared to pre-COVID. How do you think the People Plan and the promises in the People Plan will need to change?
Oh, goodness. How do I think they need to change? That's a good question. I don't know what the right answer to that, but I think it is right that they will need to change. The world has changed significantly. I think there will need to be some collective conversation around, well, actually the world has changed, and it won't be around, us, to use Helen's expression, the hippos deciding, well, what do the people promises need to be. I think it will be more around what will be the journey to design those new people promises for what is going to be relevant for people in the world post-COVID.
Yeah, great. That was a really horrible question. So am I allowed to ask another one?
Yeah, go for it. And hippos, are they the highest paid person, aren't they, in the room?
Yeah, highest paid person's opinion. The hippo opinions. So another question that we had is, and this comes from Lindsay, do you think that the emphasis on building resilience could have negative consequences if people are struggling to cope?
I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Semantically, it depends what you think resilience is. In my world, resilience is very simple. It means the ability to recognize that what you're doing is not helpful for you, how you're thinking is not helpful, what you're doing is not helpful, and then being able to get your attention onto and do things that are more helpful. So using that definition, there's no way that being more resilient can ever be harmful, because it's all about doing more things that are helpful for you being healthier, happier, and at your best more often. And actually the root of that definition is really coming from emotional regulation, getting better at recognizing our emotions and managing them. And that can only be a helpful thing, because remember, most of what we're doing most of the time is mindless behavior. We're not thinking most of the time. So if we can just think a tiny little bit more, life will get easier. So yeah, in our definition, no, it can't be. It can only be helpful.
Thanks, John. Bridget or Mark or Helen, what are your thoughts? Yeah, go for it, Bridget.
Shall I dive in?
Yeah.
Resilience is one of those terms that gets used an awful lot about children from armed forces families who talk about how very resilient they are, and how, and it is true that if you put a certain amount of discomfort and difficulty in a child's life and they have to overcome it, that does kind of build some sort of resilience. But I don't think we can assume that is the case, and I think we just have to be very careful about how we talk about resilience, because there's a fine line between sort of saying, you know, it's an admirable quality and sort of making people feel that they should be sort of sucking it up in a funny, you know, for want of a better expression, it's awful expression. So I think we just need to be careful about that, because there's a bit of pressure, I think, attached to that. We all want to be resilient, you know, people, but actually at different times people can be quite fragile for all sorts of different reasons, and actually that's okay. Yeah. We just need to be careful, I think, how we use that.
Brilliant. Thanks for your thoughts, Bridget, and thanks John, Mark and Bridget, and our chat box hosts as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come to our senior responsible officer for this wellbeing work, M. Wilkinson Bryce. M, do you want to come on and just say hello and maybe share something about your experience of working at home as a working parent?
Thank you. Can you hear me, Zoe?
Yeah, we can, thank you.
Perfect. So thanks very much. What a great session. So my name is M. Wilkinson Bryce. I'm the Deputy Chief People Officer. So I work alongside Prana Issa as the Chief People Officer. And we set up this national offer in 2 weeks. And I was just reflecting on where it's grown from. So it's sort of from little acorns, great oak trees grow. And I'm very grateful for the work that Sonia's done alongside me in her leadership of this. So my reflections are, so I have a 14-year-old son. And I also reflect on the fact that I've been in the NHS for 32 years as a nurse for all of those years. And what I believe is it doesn't matter whether you're in a clinical role or not. The magic happens when people are able to give of themselves. And what I see and hear on this call particularly is that we're so much more than the jobs we do. We are people, we are parents, we are friends, we are people, living, breathing people. So I guess what it's really said to me is, health and well-being was a key focus of the people plan. I've never felt that it's been more important than through COVID. And I think what I would just ask is, as people kind of sign out of this webinar, please give me, as the SRO for this programme, your thoughts about what else is helpful. I think Sonia from the outset said, we've never wanted to present something nationally that would supersede what's happening within local organisations and local systems. What we need to do is augment anything that we can. So if there are things that you would have us do more of, please say. I also think there is no going back. I don't think we can possibly, as an NHS, nor do I want us to, say, well, we did all of that for COVID and that's it. I think what we've said is we just need to go further with this whole agenda and really think about what is it that we need to do in terms of health and well-being for our most treasured part of the NHS, which has to be our people. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Em. So if you want to comment on anything or share anything with Em, then please do use the chat box now. So I'd just like to say thanks to Em, thanks to Sonia, Mark, Bridget and John. Thank you ever so much for your contribution to our session today. We've got a little poll for you, but I think we're going to do it in the chat box instead. So Elizabeth, do you want to share this one with us?
Yes, if you can please share with us to what extent today's session has been useful in your own role supporting health and well-being during and after COVID-19. That would be useful. Please drop us a note in the chat box, and that would be really, really great. Lots of people already doing that, lots of fives there. Thank you very much. As that is running, Zoe, can we have the next slide? Yeah, and as usual, we always end with a call to action. If you go back one, Zoe. And just really a quick note to also share one practical thing you're going to take away from today's session, something you're going to do either for yourself or for your colleagues. That will be really, really welcome. Thank you. The next slide, Zoe. And we have another session next week at the same time, and that will be focused on leaders' well-being. So please join us again next Wednesday, the 10th of June, between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., when we will be sharing views on how we can support leaders' well-being. So thank you very much. Our time together usually goes very, very quickly. And big thank you to everybody who has joined, and keep sharing what you can on the chat box. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you to the speakers. And I've had a number of private messages saying, can I have the slides and can we have the recording as well? Yes, you can. They're all on the Horizons website, and we'll put the link to that both in the YouTube and the Zoom chat boxes, so you can pick that up after. But we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Take care. Em, if you're online, and we'll if you'd like to just stay online. If you are online, then you can join our after session. Thank you, everybody. See you shortly.